A few decades ago, Robin's classic costume, with the pixie shorts and bright colors, was already showing its age, and DC reached out to artists to design a new look for Batman's junior partner. You're probably thinking I'm about to show the sketches from Neal Adams and Norm Breyfogle's redesign of Tim Drake's 90s costume. But you'd only be half right. The year is 1977, and DC's readers were the ones asked to take a go at redesigning Robin to be published in Batman Family number 13. But one thing was the same as the 90s. One of the artists featured was none other than a then 14-year-old Norm Breyfogle. Norm Breyfogle was born on February 27, 1960, in Iowa City, Iowa, and he started art lessons at 12. A few years later, the Daily Mining Gazette in Michigan, where the family had relocated to, profiled him as Norm Breyfogle, near master cartoonist at 16. And you've seen the art from that Batman Family issue, which is really solid for a teenage novice. That said, the original is probably much better. Breyfogle explained, "The Robin drawing? God, I was 14. There was a Design Robin's costume contest in Batman Family, so I did a really large drawing, 18 by 24 or so. They had some production artists redraw them if they didn't fit their parameters. They didn't want to bother with a halftone shot for some amateur. When I saw it in print, I was horrified. I was quite a bit better at that point than that exhibits." Breyfogle had already decided he wanted to draw comics for a living, and he was inspired primarily by one artist, Neal Adams. Adams revolutionized comics in the 60s and 70s, bringing dynamic figure drawing and illustration techniques he brought in from his career as an advertising artist. An issue of Brave and the Bold, featuring Batman teaming up with Sergeant Rock, opened Breyfogle's eyes to how much energy and excitement the right artist could bring to a comic, and to Batman specifically. He recounted, "That was the impression that Neal Adams made on me with his Batman work back in the late 60s. In fact, I credit his work for being almost solely responsible for me wanting to draw comics. That was when I decided I wanted to draw comics. Adams had that impact on me. It's really neat to know that I could have had that impact on anybody else. That's how the torch of passion for comics is passed on from generation to generation." In the mid-80s, Breyfogle made it to DC, providing art for DC's New Talent Showcase. That got him some attention, and he was hired at First Comics for some American flag stories and then at Eclipse, drawing Tales of Terror. From there, he made a brief stop at the House of Ideas, drawing a Captain America story published in Marvel Fanfare number 29. Breyfogle then went back to First Comics to pencil his first monthly book, Whisper. Whisper was a female martial arts hero, and her adventures had some early cyberpunk overtones. But Breyfogle's dynamic work and rapid improvement meant that it was only a matter of time before he was working on a big assignment. So, in 1987, he was given the art reins of Detective Comics, partnering with writer Alan Grant. Now, it's hard to imagine, given Batman's popularity in general, that in 1987, the sales of Batman and Detective Comics weren't doing all that well, even given the release of Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns a year earlier. It was just 2 years before the BATMANIA summer of 1989 when the Tim Burton movie took over the pop culture landscape, and once that hit, DC's biggest problem selling Bat content was just how to find enough paper to meet the seemingly inexhaustible demand. A lot would happen in those 2 years to revitalize the Caped Crusader, and as someone who started collecting comics in those years, I can tell you Norm Breyfogle's art played a big role. Christopher Irving asked Breyfogle in an interview, "So, Norm, did you know that the Batman sales weren't that great when you were given the assignment?" Breyfogle said, "I don't recall. I probably didn't really care. I just knew I was drawing Batman and that was pretty good." Breyfogle's work was incredibly dynamic. His Batman was sleeker and looked faster and quicker than any other portrayal of the Dark Knight. Everything leapt off the page. Every punch looked like a sledgehammer. And he used Gotham City's dark shadows to great effect, making Batman a creature of the night that, when seen from the vantage point of his enemies, was a terrifying figure of vengeance. Breyfogle said, "I was actually drawing him from the fan's point of view, and I think that's pretty much the same thing, because Batman, from a fan's point of view, is at his most dynamic when he's seen through the eyes of one of his nemesis." I can see what you're saying. I didn't consciously try to draw him from the criminal's point of view per se. I was just trying to make him look as cool as possible. And that's what I think really makes an artist's run on a character classic, that they find a unique way of drawing that highlights what's really impactful and impressive about a character. I mentioned earlier that Batman comics were poor sellers when he took over Detective in '87 and rebounded to unheard of heights in the following years. I don't mean to suggest that Breyfogle and Grant were solely, or even primarily, responsible for that. As soon as the Burton movie's trailer was released, interest in Batman started to see a huge spike. But, without denigrating other bad artists of the mid-'80s, Breyfogle's Dark Knight seemed to match the energy of what fans were looking for. The dark shadows and architecture felt more like the noir-influenced, dangerous industrial dystopia Gotham Anton Furst envisioned. And the dramatic, exaggerated way Breyfogle drew Batman and his cape in motion has the bombast and speed of Danny Elfman's classic score. During their run, Breyfogle and Grant introduced new characters that have endured far beyond their tenure with Batman. Victor Zsasz, a serial killer that marked himself for every victim, has become a permanent fixture in Batman's rogues gallery, and has even made a few appearances in movie and TV adaptations. Amygdala, a victim of a twisted experiment on his brain, has superhuman strength and lashed out in violent outbursts. And Jeremiah Arkham, warden of the titular asylum, was a psychiatrist who was slowly driven insane by the villains he was attempting to treat. Jeremiah himself has been featured on and off, but his stories were the beginning of a renewed focus on Arkham Asylum, making it a much bigger part of the Batman mythos. The run featured a lot of settings and characters, spanning street-level crime stories in Gotham to supernatural villains fought across the globe. Mike O'Ryan pointed out to Breyfogle, "You were able, often, in your work on Batman, to maintain a credible feel for the strip, whether the menaces were supernatural or street, Macalla or drug dealers." Breyfogle responded, "That's due to both Alan and me. Alan's writing flowed. His distilling of concepts is so economical, and he has so much experience writing in so many different genres that he can blend genres together, and it all works. I had a lot of experience drawing realistic stuff, fully painted work, drawing from life, drawing anything under the sun. It worked for me too. I had no problems at all depicting something otherworldly right next to street punks. In fact, that was part of the joy of doing the strip. I always felt like you never knew exactly what to expect out of the next script." Breyfogle spent a few years on Detective before moving to the main Batman title in 1990. It's during this run, while Tim Drake was being introduced as the new Robin, that Breyfogle got another shot at redesigning the character. A few other artists provided ideas, among them Neal Adams. Breyfogle recounted, "There were certain things they did retain, even though they chose Neal Adams' costume design. The R symbol Robin's got is almost entirely mine. Everyone else gave him the same R symbol. I was the only one who changed that, gave it a bit more character. And I considered making it a throwing star too. And then the staff that he used was my idea. It made sense to me that if we're trying to make Robin more realistic, we don't like his stupid costume, and after I'd read Frank Miller's The Dark Knight, it was becoming more and more apparent that having a child running around with an adult or teenager, when he's pretty reckless, is a bad idea. Instead of giving him a gun, which you can't do because of the mythos, I gave him a staff, which extended his reach so he could compete with adults. So that was mine too. I guess I'll have to keep saying that, otherwise people will forget." While, as mentioned, Adams' design was primarily the one used, Breyfogle was the one to draw the new look in the comics, resulting in one of the most memorable pages of the era. His take on this Robin is, to me, still the definitive version. He moved to a new series featuring his artwork, Shadow of the Bat, in 1992. If you're a fan of comic art like I am, be sure to like this video and subscribe. I'll have a lot more deep dives into the legendary artist whose work inspires us, and that's the best way to make sure you see it. And if you want to see some comics, art like this has inspired me to create. My Kickstarter for August, Purgatory Underground, is live until August 14th. If you're a fan of space opera like Star Wars, or 80s franchises like He-Man or Transformers, this is the comic for you. I have a 200-page hardcover for $38, including shipping, a deluxe digital for $8, and a standard digital for just $3. So when you're done watching, please head over there and give that a look if you're interested. Link is right down there in the description. I could really use your support. Thanks, and let's get back to the video. In 1993, Breyfogle moved over to Malibu to co-create a character for the new Ultraverse, Prime. Prime was kind of a take on Captain Marvel, exploring some of the drawbacks a younger character might encounter upon becoming a superhero. His art was the standout of the line, and he stayed on Prime for 12 issues. He also made time in the 90s to revisit Metaphysique, a series he created and wrote as well as drawing. Metaphysique allowed him to explore philosophical concepts through the supernatural main character. Breyfogle continued to do runs on other DC books, such as DC 1 Million, The Spectre, and Anarchy, a character he and Alan Grant created that spun off from their Batman run. He also drew 10 pages of the classic Superman in Superman 80-Page Giant #1. As a huge fan of Superman and of Breyfogle's art, I was excited to see a rare look at him drawing the Man of Steel. In fact, I was lucky enough to find a page of original art from this series, and it's one of the only pages of art I own. Breyfogle's work expanded beyond the big two in the 2000s. He partnered with writer Chuck Satterley to pencil and ink Of Bitter Souls, and produced art for clients outside the comic industry, as well as providing spot illustrations for novels. We got to see his take on Archie and his cast when he started drawing a few books at Archie Comics. But he never went too long without returning to DC, doing some art for the Batman Beyond digital series, and some parts of the DC Retroactive event, reuniting with his old Batman partner, Alan Grant. Sadly, in 2014, Breyfogle suffered a stroke, paralyzing his left side, and making it impossible to draw. And 4 years after that, he passed away from a heart attack far too soon, at the age of 58. Norm Breyfogle's Batman work remains popular and in print, and you'll find him on almost any list of top 10 Batman artists you can find. He left a real legacy, and it brings to mind his quote earlier about how he was inspired by Neal Adams' work when he was young, saying, "That was how the torch of passion for comics is passed on from generation to generation, and that it was really neat to know that he could have had that impact on anyone else." If you're someone who read his work in the 80s and 90s, I'm sure you feel, like I do, that he had that impact on us. Let me know in the comments your favorite Breyfogle books and who you'd like to see featured next. And, as always, keep reading those comics.